I've actually never really thought of myself as an ambitious person. I've always had a little bit more of a lofty sense of the sweetness of doing nothing, I think, is a skill. It's something that has to be practiced.
Discipline.
Some smiles don't just light up the screen, they become cultural symbols of an entire era. Julia Roberts, the woman Hollywood crowned America's sweetheart, created a legend with a single smile in Pretty Woman back in 1990. But behind that smile lay more than glory: an Oscar, a $25 million paycheck, or endless rankings as the most beautiful woman in the world. Behind it was an unsettled childhood marked by loss and violence, romances that collapsed under the bitter laughter of the press, a marriage once heavily criticized by the public, and family tragedies that never faded. For over 3 decades, Julia Roberts has been both Hollywood's Cinderella and a fugitive in her own life, from a real-life runaway bride scandal, to a mocking t-shirt that stirred outrage, to the shock of discovering she didn't truly bear the Roberts name. And just when the world believed she had it all, money, fame, family, Julia herself admitted that at times she still felt an emptiness inside her multi-million-dollar Malibu mansion. So, what is the true face of Julia Roberts? A star who braved every storm to preserve her smile for audiences? Or a woman carrying silent scars revealed only when the spotlight fades? Julia Fiona Roberts was born on October 28, 1967, in the small town of Smyrna, Georgia, a quiet suburb surrounded by the smog and grit of the American South's industrial belt. She was the youngest of 3 siblings. Her brother Eric and sister Lisa would later both pursue acting as well. Her parents, Walter Grady Roberts and Betty Lou, were passionate about the arts. Walter was an amateur actor and playwright, while Betty Lou, in addition to working as a church secretary, also appeared on stage. Together they ran a small local acting school, a place where children could find joy and escape through art instead of being confined by the harsh rhythms of industrial Southern life. One little-known but fateful detail: among the school's students were the children of Martin Luther King Jr. Out of gratitude for the Roberts family's kindness, King personally paid the hospital bill when Betty Lou gave birth to Julia. That single gesture, though simple, became a strange thread tying Julia Roberts' childhood to one of America's greatest historical figures. But her life as a little girl was far from idyllic. In 1971, when Julia was only 4, her parents divorced. The fragile household collapsed, leaving the children adrift and emotionally deprived. Just a year later, her mother remarried Michael Motes, a man whom Julia's brother Eric would later bluntly call a devil. He neglected his stepchildren and at times turned violent. What should have been years of innocence for Julia became instead a time of quiet fear and trauma. At just 10 years old, another heartbreak came. Her father, Walter, died of throat cancer at the age of 44. The first man to spark Julia's love for art was gone far too soon, leaving a void nothing could fill. For her, it was a loss both cold and aching, a childhood wound that would linger throughout her adult life. Far from the radiant image she would later project, Julia as a child was often teased. Schoolmates mocked her as a horse or ugly because of her lanky frame, oversized teeth, and unruly curls. Julia herself never thought she was beautiful. She once admitted that, despite being hailed as the owner of $1 million smile, every time she looked in the mirror, she only saw horse teeth, straw hair, and grasshopper legs. That shadow of insecurity never fully disappeared, but became a psychological scar she would constantly battle. Decades later, another shock struck at the core of her identity. On the show, Finding Your Roots, DNA analysis revealed that the Roberts bloodline, the name that had built Julia's legacy, was not her true lineage. She was in fact a descendant of the Mitchell family. Julia reacted with both astonishment and irony. "So that means I'm Julia Mitchell?" The revelation rattled her sense of self, as if even her name were just another mask life had placed upon her. Yet it was through those relentless upheavals, violence, loss, mockery, and the shock of fractured identity that Julia forged an invisible armor. From the little girl who once cried at being called ugly, Julia Roberts cultivated a quiet resilience. And when she left Georgia for New York and then Hollywood, she carried with her a determination to transform the smile, once ridiculed, into a weapon powerful enough to conquer the world. When Julia Roberts left the narrow confines of Smyrna, she carried no ready-made spotlight with her. At that time, her first dream wasn't acting at all, but becoming a veterinarian. Julia loved animals so deeply that she believed she could heal them. But the rising fame of her brother, Eric Roberts, on the big screen changed everything. Watching him appear in film after film, Julia began to see another path, distant yet irresistible. After finishing high school, Julia enrolled at Georgia State University, but soon decided to drop out and move to New York with her sister Lisa. There, she signed with a modeling agency while also taking acting and diction classes to erase her Southern accent. At first, nothing seemed to come of it. She failed audition after audition, and her tiny parts in commercials brought little hope. That was when the curly-haired girl realized Hollywood didn't need another small-town girl with a strange smile. It was her brother Eric who first opened the door to film. After making a name for himself, he secured her a small part, playing his on-screen sister in Blood Red. The role was fleeting, but for Julia, it was the first time she stood in front of a camera. However, their sibling bond soon fractured. Eric believed Julia needed to stand on her own instead of relying on him, while Julia saw his decision as a betrayal. For years, they barely spoke, and the press later highlighted how Julia even retaliated by publicly siding with Eric's ex-wife during their divorce. That family rift became part of Julia's baggage as she stepped into her career. Without the safety net of family or her brother, Julia had to carve her own way, a path lit not by instant stardom, but by patience and persistence. In 1987, she made her television debut in an episode of Crime Story. The role lasted only a few minutes with no memorable lines, but for Julia, it was her first ticket into Hollywood's ruthless carousel. That same year, she appeared in Firehouse, a forgettable film where her part was just as minor. None of these experiences made her name known, but they taught her the first harsh lesson. Cinema moved at breakneck speed, and without resilience, you would be discarded in an instant. Undeterred, Julia took on Satisfaction, 1988, a film about an all-female rock band chasing opportunity. To prepare, she learned to play drums and bass, a world away from her childhood dream of becoming a vet. Hours of practice left her hands blistered and raw, while endless shoots in cramped studios toughened her resolve to survive in the industry. And on that set, she experienced her first taste of love with Liam Neeson, the Irish actor 16 years her senior and already a rising name. Julia was just 19, wide-eyed and inexperienced, and the relationship felt like a dream. They quickly moved in together, but Julia soon realized that the age and experience gap made her unready for family life. The romance ended as swiftly as it began, leaving Julia with her first scar, fleeting, passionate, and bittersweet. But destiny didn't leave her in the shadows of small roles or fleeting affairs. The true turning point came in late 1988, when she landed the role of Daisy in Mystic Pizza. The film followed 3 young women working in a Connecticut pizzeria, and Julia, with her cascading curls and radiant smile, turned Daisy into the film's beating heart. Though Mystic Pizza wasn't a box office smash, it caught the critics' eyes. Roger Ebert, the most influential American film critic of the time, wrote words that felt almost prophetic. Julia Roberts, a strong beauty with fierce energy, she will be a star. His prediction charted the course for the career ahead. Just a year later, Julia soared further with Steel Magnolias, 1989, a film boasting a powerhouse cast of Sally Field, Dolly Parton, Shirley MacLaine, and Olympia Dukakis. Among these established legends, Julia, barely in her 20s, carried the role of Shelby, a young bride with diabetes, desperate for love and happiness but as fragile as glass. Director Herbert Ross, notoriously harsh, criticized her looks, her acting, even her voice. Each day on set was a psychological battle, yet the pressure forced Julia to transform. Her performance brought audiences to tears, won her colleagues' respect, and earned critics' praise for the newcomer. For her role as Shelby, Julia Roberts won the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress and received her first Academy Award nomination at just 22. From the little girl mocked for her horse teeth and grasshopper legs, Julia Roberts, in just a few short years, had become one of Hollywood's most promising faces. The door to stardom had opened, and behind it awaited both dreams and turbulence she could scarcely imagine. After Steel Magnolias, Julia Roberts' name began appearing on Hollywood's lists of stars to watch. But it wasn't until 1990, when she stepped into the role of Vivian Ward in Pretty Woman, that her career truly turned a page. The film, originally expected to be just a mid-tier romantic project, unexpectedly became a global phenomenon. With box office earnings of over $460 million, a record for romantic comedies at the time, Pretty Woman not only saved Touchstone Pictures from crisis, but also transformed Julia from a promising newcomer into a screen icon. The behind-the-scenes stories of Pretty Woman became so legendary that they almost helped build the Julia Roberts myth. The moment when Richard Gere suddenly snapped a jewelry box shut just as Julia reached for the necklace, causing her to burst into a spontaneous, radiant laugh, wasn't in the script. Director Gary Marshall kept it in, and it became one of the most beloved moments in romantic film history. On another day, Julia collapsed from exhaustion on set, but when she regained consciousness, she went right back to work without complaint. Even the film's iconic poster, featuring Vivian in a body-hugging red dress, hid a secret. The shapely figure wasn't Julia's at all, but that of body double Shelley Michelle, a fact only revealed years later. All of this cemented Julia Roberts' image as Hollywood's real-life Cinderella. With a single role, she shot from promising actress to America's sweetheart, the dream girl of American audiences and the reigning queen of romantic comedies in the 1990s. Julia brought a new kind of heroine, fragile yet strong, ordinary yet magical. Studios rushed to cast her in major projects. And for years, Julia Roberts wasn't just the most sought-after face in Hollywood, she became the highest-paid actress in the world, ushering in her golden era. Following Pretty Woman, a string of films solidified her position. Sleeping with the Enemy, 1991, revealed a different Julia, strong, desperate for freedom, unafraid to expose the inner terror of a woman fleeing domestic violence. The film was a major hit, proving that Julia's name alone could draw audiences to theaters. In 1991, she also starred in Dying Young, a love story between a young woman and a terminally ill man. While not a masterpiece, it reinforced her image as the Queen of Romance on screen. That same year, Steven Spielberg cast her as Tinker Bell in Hook. But the shoot was a nightmare. Julia, then struggling with personal turmoil, was often exhausted and irritable. Spielberg reportedly grew so frustrated that he nicknamed her Tinker Hell. After that film, the two never worked together again. In the years that followed, Julia Roberts proved she was far more than a rom-com pretty face. In The Pelican Brief, 1993, opposite Denzel Washington, she demonstrated her ability to balance allure with dramatic depth in a political legal thriller. The performance expanded her range, making Julia one of the rare actresses who could carry multiple genres. By the late 1990s, Julia returned to her romantic comedy roots and instantly reclaimed her box office crown. Notting Hill, 1999, the story of love between a Hollywood star and a London bookstore owner, quickly became a classic, immortalized by the line, "I'm just a girl, standing in front of a boy, asking him to love her." That same year, Runaway Bride reunited Julia with Richard Gere. The film directly played on her real-life image as a runaway bride, turning a once scandalous broken engagement into a humorous chapter of her career. From Vivian in Pretty Woman to Maggie Carpenter in Runaway Bride, Julia Roberts became not just the face of a cinematic generation, but also a cultural symbol, a woman radiant yet shadowed, whose every smile seemed to carry an untold story beneath it. As the new millennium began, Julia Roberts was no longer just the queen of rom-coms. She had proven herself to be one of Hollywood's true heavyweights. In 2000, she embodied Erin Brockovich, an ordinary but fiercely determined woman in a legal battle against Pacific Gas and Electric. The film not only conquered the box office, but also brought Julia to the peak of her career, winning the Academy Award for Best Actress, a Golden Globe, and the Screen Actors Guild Award. With a $20 million salary, she became the first actress in Hollywood history to command such a record-breaking fee, cementing her position as the #1 female star in the world. From then on, Julia became the top choice for major projects. Ocean's 11, 2001, and its sequel, Ocean's 12, 2004, showed that she could blend into an all-star ensemble, yet still shine with her own grace. In 2003, Mona Lisa Smile earned her $25 million, setting yet another salary record for actresses. With Closer, 2004, she stepped away from her familiar sweet image to portray a thorny character full of emotional contradictions. And in Charlie Wilson's War, 2007, Julia stood alongside Tom Hanks in a politically charged role, once again proving her versatility in script choices. She didn't stop there, carefully selecting projects that carried personal significance. Eat, Pray, Love, 2010, a film for which she personally acquired the rights to adapt from the best-selling book, became a cultural phenomenon, tying her image to a journey of self-discovery. Then came August, Osage County, 2013, where she tackled a dramatic, emotionally complex family role that earned her another Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress. With Wonder, 2017, Julia once again touched audiences' hearts as a mother fiercely protecting her son born with facial differences, a deeply human story that brought her even closer to audiences. Moving into the 2010s and 2020s, Julia Roberts no longer appeared as frequently as in her golden era, but she never disappeared from Hollywood's landscape. Instead, she deliberately slowed her pace, carefully choosing projects of true significance, preserving her image by only stepping into the spotlight when it mattered to her. In 2018, she surprised many by venturing into television with the series Homecoming. Playing Heidi Bergman, a caseworker at a reintegration program for veterans, Julia displayed remarkable subtlety and emotional depth. She made viewers forget the silver screen sweetheart of the past and see instead a serious actress willing to reinvent herself. The series was quickly embraced by critics, proving that even on the small screen, Julia could create a phenomenon. 4 years later, she shocked the public again by joining Gaslit, 2022, a series exploring the Watergate scandal that once rocked American politics. As Martha Mitchell, the woman who dared to speak out against power, Julia delivered a raw, intense performance, both different and daring. The role not only refreshed her career, but also reaffirmed that Julia Roberts could still stand at the center of major stories, far beyond the realm of romantic films that first defined her. In film, too, Julia chose quality over quantity. Ticket to Paradise, 2022, marked a charming reunion with George Clooney, no longer as the dreamy young couple, but as two seasoned adults confronting love and marriage with humor and wisdom. The film was lighthearted yet mature, reminding audiences that Julia had not only preserved her romantic allure, but learned how to carry it gracefully through time. Then, with Leave the World Behind, 2023, on Netflix, Julia took on a far grittier narrative, a family facing societal collapse and apocalyptic dread. It was a bold testament to her courage, unafraid to embrace urgent, heavy themes even when they didn't promise an easy box office victory. More than 3 decades after that smile first lit up the screen, Julia Roberts has transcended the label of America's sweetheart to become a lasting icon. She knows when to explode with brilliance and when to step back, leaving space for only the roles that matter most. That restraint and sophistication are what keep Julia forever fresh in the eyes of audiences, not fading with time, but becoming more precious with every passing year. Julia Roberts' career skyrocketed, transforming her from a fresh face into America's sweetheart in just a few short years. But behind the dazzling spotlight, her love life in the 1980s and 1990s was equally dramatic, often so turbulent that it overshadowed her on-screen roles. Her first Hollywood romance came when she was just 19. In 1988, on the set of Satisfaction, a film about an all-girl rock band, Julia met Liam Neeson, then 35, already an actor on the rise with a strong, seasoned presence. Julia was drawn to Liam's maturity, while he was enchanted by the brightness and innocence of the young newcomer. After only a brief courtship, the two moved in together. But the romance soon collided with their age gap and differing visions of the future. Julia realized she wasn't ready for marriage or family responsibilities, while Liam longed for something lasting. A year later, they quietly parted ways, leaving Julia with her first real taste of how fragile love in Hollywood could be. Not long after, fate brought Julia to Dylan McDermott while filming Steel Magnolias, 1989. On screen, Julia played Shelby, a young bride with diabetes. Off-screen, her romance with Dylan was as tender as any movie script. Dylan was so smitten that he proposed. Yet, with her career just beginning to take off, Julia hesitated. Faced with choosing between love and the wide-open opportunities ahead, she wasn't ready to settle down. The dream wedding never happened, and the relationship ended before it could grow deeper. But the most public and most devastating romance came with Kiefer Sutherland. The two met on the set of Flatliners, 1990, a psychological thriller about young doctors experimenting with near-death experiences. Julia and Kiefer quickly became inseparable, and the media hailed them as Hollywood's new golden couple. After a year together, they got engaged and began planning what was dubbed the wedding of the century, scheduled for June 1991. Reports described it as a lavish affair, complete with a custom-designed gown and a guest list full of stars. Then, just 3 days before the wedding, Julia shocked the world by calling it off. The reason? Kiefer had been caught getting close with a stripper, while Julia was spotted in Ireland with Jason Patric, Kiefer's best friend. The scandal rocked Hollywood. Overnight, Julia went from being the perfect bride to being branded the runaway bride. Ironically, years later, that very nickname would inspire director Gary Marshall to cast her in Runaway Bride, 1999, one of the decade's most successful romantic comedies. For Julia, the relationship with Kiefer left lasting scars. She endured harsh media backlash, with every move scrutinized and nearly burned out under the weight of public judgment. But instead of collapsing, Julia chose to keep moving forward. Her smile continued to light up the screen, even if behind it lay a heart fractured multiple times in the span of only a few years. After the shock of being labeled the runaway bride, Julia Roberts did not give up on love. And then, in 1993, Hollywood was stunned once again when she married country singer Lyle Lovett after only a few weeks of dating. They had met on the set of The Player and almost instantly felt a strange pull toward each other. Just 3 weeks later, their whirlwind wedding took place, leaving both the press and fans astonished. Julia, in a simple white dress, and Lyle, with his signature unruly curls, walked hand in hand into marriage as if starring in a short film. However, their vastly different lifestyles quickly became apparent. Julia, then an A-list Hollywood star, was constantly traveling between film sets, while Lyle was rooted in the country music scene, carrying a slower, quieter rhythm of life. In the beginning, they tried to keep their love alive with hurried flights and late-night phone calls, but the distance, both geographical and emotional, gradually eroded their bond. 2 years later, the marriage ended peacefully, without conflict or scandal, but left Julia with the sobering realization that passion alone was not enough to withstand reality. In the years that followed, Julia entered several romances, each leaving its own mark. On the set of Friends in 1996, she met Matthew Perry. The romance between the silver screen's sweetheart and America's sitcom heartthrob delighted the public. Yet behind the flashing cameras, Julia quickly realized Matthew was struggling with addiction to drugs and painkillers. Unable to stay with someone intent on self-destruction, she ended the relationship, though not without regret. Shortly afterward, Julia was romantically linked with Daniel Day-Lewis and Ethan Hawke, both complex, ambitious artists. But those affairs were fleeting, brief sparks that never had the strength to last. The man who remained in Julia's life the longest during this period was Benjamin Bratt. They met in the late 1990s when Julia was already a global superstar, and Benjamin was known for his role on the TV series Law & Order. Julia later admitted she fell in love at first sight when she saw Benjamin on the street. They became a picture-perfect couple, together for 4 years, frequently appearing hand in hand on red carpets. The media dubbed him Mr. Roberts, as though he were merely a shadow beside such a towering star. But it was precisely that imbalance that began to strain the relationship. Julia was constantly immersed in blockbuster projects, while Benjamin longed for a simpler life. Eventually, they parted ways quietly, without scandal, but with enough weight to remind Julia that even love with a fellow actor was no guarantee of permanence. In 2000, while filming The Mexican with Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts met Daniel Moder, a quiet cinematographer with deep, steady eyes. Amid the noise of Hollywood, his calm presence immediately drew Julia in. But there was one problem. Daniel was still married to makeup artist Vera Steinberg. Their romance quickly leaked to the press, igniting controversy. Julia couldn't hide her feelings. She was so smitten with Daniel that she defied public judgment. One of the most infamous moments came when paparazzi caught Julia wearing a homemade t-shirt emblazoned with the words, "Aloe Vera," a biting play on words aimed at Daniel's wife at the time. The gesture was instantly condemned as cruel and unworthy of someone known as America's sweetheart. Rumors swirled that Julia paid Vera around $200,000 to agree to the divorce. The story was never confirmed, but it clung to her public image, fueling the narrative that she had stolen a husband. Julia remained silent, offering no defense, choosing instead to live and love on her own terms. After Daniel's divorce was finalized, the two quickly moved toward marriage. On July 4th, 2002, at her sprawling ranch in Taos, New Mexico, Julia and Daniel held a secret nighttime wedding. Many guests thought they were simply attending a casual party until the ceremony began. Julia wore a simple pink cotton dress, Daniel a ruffled shirt, and under the star-filled sky, they exchanged vows. Beforehand, they had even tattooed each other's initials in hidden places, a private mark of their bond. Their marriage soon bore fruit. In 2004, Julia gave birth to twins, Hazel and Phineas, in a life-threatening situation. She had been warned of a rare blood clotting disorder that put her at risk of dying during childbirth. The premature delivery terrified the family, but both mother and babies survived safely. In 2007, their youngest son, Henry, was born. For Julia, this was a turning point. From a star constantly pursued by flashing cameras, she became a devoted mother who put her children first. The family chose a quiet life on their 8,000-square-foot ranch in New Mexico. Julia raised chickens, grew organic vegetables, and even drove a tractor, an image worlds apart from the glamorous icon she once was. She shielded her children from the press as much as possible, fiercely protecting their privacy so they could grow up normally. Even so, rumors of marital rifts swirled constantly. Tabloids reported cold wars between Julia and Daniel, disagreements about living in Los Angeles versus New Mexico, even claims that they had separated. But each time, the couple appeared hand in public or shared anniversary photos. In 2021, they posted a sweet picture of themselves kissing to mark 19 years together. A quiet statement that, despite the storms, their love endured. For Julia Roberts, Daniel Motter is more than just a husband. He is the final harbor after so many short-lived, stormy romances. Yet to reach that happiness, she had to sacrifice her image as the perfect goddess in the public eye, accepting judgment and even being branded a homewrecker. Perhaps it is precisely this imperfect choice that has proven the love to be truly lasting. Just when it seemed Julia had found balance in life, fate tested her once again. In 2014, Hollywood was shaken when Nancy Moats, Julia's half-sister, was found dead of a drug overdose. Beside her body lay a 3-page suicide note in which Nancy not only described her anguish, but also directly accused Julia of body-shaming her, mocking her weight, and driving her deeper into despair. The media turned the story into a frenzy, placing Julia under a storm of suspicion and criticism. For a star long celebrated as America's sweetheart, being accused of emotionally wounding her own sister created a jarring contradiction. Julia chose silence, appearing in public only with reddened eyes and a brief statement that her family was enduring unspeakable pain. Friends later revealed that she was haunted, crushed by guilt, even though the truth was never fully known. Nancy's death was not just a personal tragedy, but a deep fracture in Julia's life. It stirred painful memories of her own childhood, when she had endured abuse from her stepfather. From then on, Julia became even more guarded, distancing herself from public noise, keeping her world small, limited to her husband and children and the private space she fought so hard to protect. After the turmoil of family tragedies, Julia Roberts devoted more of her energy to maintaining her career and protecting her home life. At a stage where she no longer had to prove her talent, what fascinated the public was how the queen of rom-coms enjoyed her achievements and preserved her immense fortune. With an estimated net worth of around $250 million, Julia has long ranked among the wealthiest actresses in Hollywood history, a testament to both her talent and her rare staying power. Her primary income has not only come from blockbuster films, where she commanded an average salary of $20 to $30 million per year, but also from the kind of luxury endorsement deals most stars could only dream of. A $50 million contract with Lancôme made Julia the long-term face of the French brand, reinforcing her image of elegance and sophistication. A mere 45-second spot for Lavazza earned her more than $1.3 million, proof of her unmatched commercial appeal. She has also served as the ambassador for Givenchy's Bare-Faced Natural campaign, the global face of Calzedonia, and a muse for Chopard. These campaigns not only provided steady revenue outside of film, but also positioned Julia as a timeless icon, a woman who could be both simple and glamorous while still influencing the public at large. Alongside the spotlight, Julia Roberts also built a reputation as a savvy real estate investor, treating property as a safe haven for her wealth. Over the years, she has owned multiple homes across the U.S., a Malibu beachside estate rented out for $10,500 per month, a 6,500 square foot Manhattan penthouse, a ranch-style retreat in Hawaii, and a 5-story San Francisco townhouse dating back to 1907. Most notably, the sprawling ranch in New Mexico, where her family now lives in seclusion, became her sanctuary, a place where Julia raises chickens, grows organic vegetables, and even drives a tractor like a true farmer. The contrast between Hollywood glamour and rural simplicity has only heightened public fascination with Julia, while earning admiration for the way she has carved out peace for herself. One of the most repeated anecdotes is the rumor that Julia insured her smile, dubbed the $1 million smile, for up to $30 million. Though never confirmed, the persistence of that story for years is proof enough that her smile is no longer just a personal feature, but a branded asset in itself. Beyond film, advertising, and property, Julia has also nurtured a quiet passion for cars. She was once seen driving a Mercedes GL 320 CDI, owned a Toyota Prius as a nod to her environmental concerns, and held onto a vintage Rolls-Royce for many years. When that car was later put up for sale in Kazakhstan, its price was inflated to $7 million, several times its true value, simply because it once belonged to Julia Roberts. It was yet another sign of how even the everyday objects tied to her carry outsized symbolic worth. By 2024, Julia Roberts no longer appeared on screen as frequently as during her golden years, but every comeback was an event. In the summer of 2024, she accepted a role in After the Hunt, directed by Luca Guadagnino. Playing Alma Olson, a Yale philosophy professor facing sexual harassment allegations against a colleague, Julia stepped into charged territory, tackling questions of morality, power, and the #MeToo movement. From filming in London and Cambridge to the red carpet at the Venice Film Festival in August 2025, Julia proved once again that she was no longer just the pretty woman of old, but an artist unafraid to confront the pressing issues of her time. When After the Hunt ended and the auditorium erupted in a 6-minute standing ovation, Julia's eyes welled with tears, as if her patience, selectivity, and courage had finally been rewarded. At the same time, another project stirred excitement: the possibility of Julia returning as Jules Potter in a sequel to My Best Friend's Wedding, the romantic comedy that defined a generation of 1990s audiences. Although the script is still in development, Julia's simple nod of agreement was enough to spark a wave of nostalgia, rekindling memories of the America's sweetheart who once captivated the world. As if that weren't enough, Julia also confirmed her role in Panic Carefully, a Warner Brothers project directed by Sam Esmail, co-starring Elizabeth Olsen, a collaboration bridging a Hollywood legend with one of the brightest young stars of today. Looking back over the past 2 years, it is clear that Julia Roberts has not chased quantity nor sought constant flashes of paparazzi bulbs. Instead, she has chosen roles with weight, projects that spark conversation rather than mere entertainment. "The important thing isn't how much I win at the box office," Julia said in Venice, "but whether the film makes audiences sit down and actually talk to each other afterward." At 57, Julia Roberts has stepped beyond the rom-com circle to embody a lasting icon, knowing when to advance, when to retreat, and above all, how to keep her light strong enough to make the world look up without ever blinding herself. Looking back on more than 3 decades, Julia Roberts' legacy lies not only in box office numbers or Oscar statuettes. She helped shape an entire era of Hollywood, when rom-coms became one of the most beloved genres, and the image of America's sweetheart with a radiant smile turned into a cultural icon. Pretty Woman was not just a hit love story. It marked a shift in how audiences viewed female leads. No longer just fragile muses, but women with agency, women powerful enough to make the world take notice. What set Julia apart was her ability to balance commerce and art. From Notting Hill or Runaway Bride, romantic tales that made millions believe in love, to Erin Brockovich, the role that won her an Oscar and became a symbol of women standing up to power, Julia always knew how to make her films strike a collective emotional chord. With Eat, Pray, Love, she sparked a global movement of self-discovery, inspiring millions of women to travel, meditate, and live differently. Her influence reached younger generations of actresses as well. Stars like Sandra Bullock, Reese Witherspoon, and Anne Hathaway have all admitted that they drew inspiration from Julia's confidence, her smile, and her command of the screen. Meanwhile, critics often cite her as proof that a woman could indeed be a box office star on par with men, something rare in 1990s Hollywood. Beyond film, Julia also left a mark on popular culture. Her million-dollar smile became one of the most lucrative advertising images of the 2000s. Endorsements with Lancôme, Chopard, and Givenchy not only reinforced her fashion status, but also made her the face of natural beauty in an era obsessed with cosmetic surgery. Even the rumor that she insured her smile helped fuel the myth around her image. A reminder that sometimes cultural icons are built not only on talent, but also on small, enduring details etched into public memory. Today, as Hollywood has changed and new screen sweethearts have emerged, Julia Roberts remains a standard of comparison. She left behind not only a string of iconic roles, but also a message. The greatest allure of a woman does not lie in youth or glamour, but in her to rise after pain, to dare to love, to endure loss, and to live authentically. Julia Roberts' life, in the end, is not only the journey of a movie star, but also a mirror reflecting the contradictions of human existence, between fame and loneliness, between private choices and public pressures. Her magnetism doesn't come from how high she once climbed, but from how she continues to make people believe in the fragile yet resilient power of a smile. They call Julia Roberts America's sweetheart. But to you, what is she? A beauty icon, a box office queen, or simply a woman who dared to live on her own terms? Do you believe that behind that million-dollar smile lies a truly happy life, or just another role Julia is still playing? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to keep discovering the stories behind the glittering facades of Hollywood legends.